Okay, so most of us got this question right in our pre-test, this top one, but a lot of us struggled with this one. But they're both actually very related, and if you really understand fractions and unit fractions, you should be able to do this one as well. So I am going to do the first one again, just to point out something about the second one. So I've drawn up 3 number lines. Now you don't have to do that, but it's just a good way of showing what's going on. So you can see quite clearly that 1/4 here, 1 out of the 4 parts, is a lot larger than, say, 1/7 here. And it's also larger than 1/5. And you can see that 1/7 is smaller than 1/5. Now, the general pattern here is that if you're cutting your number line into a smaller number of parts, like for example 4 parts, each of those parts is going to be a lot larger, isn't it? Because you're only cutting it 4 times. Or you're only cutting it 3 times really, but you're cutting it into 4 parts. If you're cutting it into 7 parts, however, obviously each of those parts has to be a lot smaller because you're cutting it up more times. So when you've got a denominator that's very large, that's going to make your unit fraction very small. So the rule is whichever has the largest denominator will be your smallest fraction. So before we move on to question 2, I just want to point out something on this number line. Now, instead of looking at the unit fraction, we're actually just going to change over our colours and have a look at the remaining section here. Now, if I know something about a unit fraction over here, I know this is 1/4, then I also know what the remaining part is, because it's just 1 whole minus 1 out of 4 parts. So how many parts would be left? 3 parts. So I know this is 3/4. And it's the same here. If I know this is 1/7 over here, then the remaining section has to be 6/7, right? Because I'm just subtracting 1 unit, which means I'll have 6 units left out of a total of 7 units. And you might notice that the smaller the unit fraction is, the larger the remaining section is. So 6/7 is much larger than 3/4, right? Because you only subtracted a really small unit fraction. So you've still got a lot left. And it's the same with this last one. You subtracted 1/5, so your remaining section has to be 4/5. And what you'll notice is 4/5 is actually one of the fractions used in this question. Now, they've used very special fractions here. 4/5 is only 1/5 away from a whole. Right, so that's a unit fraction. So 4/5 is connected to 1/5. 1/5. You can see 4/5 is connected to a unit fraction because 4/5 plus a unit fraction gives you a whole. And it's the same with these other numbers as well. 7/8, that's very close to a whole. Very, very close to 8/8. It just needs 1/8 to make up a whole. And the same over here. This is very close to a whole as well. It just needs 1 more part. So you can see that all of these fractions are connected to unit fractions. And I know this is my smallest unit fraction because 8 is my largest denominator. So remember what we set up here. If we looked at this example, the smaller the unit fraction, the larger the remaining part. So my smallest unit fraction leaves me with my largest remaining fraction. So it's the same here. My smallest unit fraction leaves me with my largest remaining fraction. So this would be the largest remaining fraction. And we can draw that up as well to visualize it on a number line. I'll do that quickly. So here we've got a visual. You can see that this is our unit fraction, 1/8. It was our smallest unit fraction over here. And it left our largest remaining fraction over here, right? Because the smaller this is, the larger this is going to be to make up one whole, right? You can imagine if this was even smaller, right? If it was only up to here, then it's just adding to this remaining section. The smaller this is, the larger this is. So our smallest unit fraction gives us our largest remaining fraction. So I'm going to do one more question now, and we don't even need to use any type of visualization because we've got the process down pat. So my first thing is that I noticed straight away these fractions here are only 1 unit fraction away from a whole, right? So 5/6, well, that corresponds to 1/6 because it's only 1/6 away from a whole. 6/7, that's 1/7 away from a whole, right? And 3/4, well, we've got 3 out of 4 parts. How many parts do we need to make a whole? Well, we'll still just need 1 more out of the 4 parts, or 1/4. Okay, so I've got my unit fractions now. I can arrange the unit fractions first, and that will help me to arrange the original fractions that they gave me in the question. So I know straight away that if my denominator is larger, the fraction will be smaller if it's a unit fraction. So I know this is my smallest unit fraction, 1/7. Imagine that my whole was cut up into 7 parts. Obviously, one of those parts, 1/7, is going to be smaller than if it was cut into only 6 parts or only 4 parts. My middle fraction will be the one with 6 in the denominator, and of course my largest fraction is going to be the one with the smallest denominator because it wasn't cut into as many parts, so each part is going to be larger. Okay, so I've ordered my unit fractions, but remember the question was asking us to order these fractions up here, so don't stop there. And basically all we have to do is reverse the order, because if you're taking away a small amount, you're going to be left with a larger amount. So if 1/7 is the smallest, that means 6/7, the remaining area left, or the remaining part, is going to be the largest. And similarly, if you're taking away a whole quarter, well, that means you're going to be left with a smaller part to make up a whole. So if you take away 1/4, 3/4 is actually not going to be as large as if you only took away 1/7. And finally, we still have our middle. So all we did was we reversed the order. So now we can put it from smallest to largest: 3/4, 5/6, and 6/7. There we go. Put some commas in there.